Welcome in this second part of the Sonny Chiba retrospective. I'm going to dive in directly into the content of this video because the first one was already extremely long, and I will try to keep this one slightly shorter, even if it's going to be long anyway, because we have once again a lot of films to cover. And at the end of the very first video, I had stopped with the invincible power of Aikido, one of the last films Sonny Chiba did in 1975, and I have kept one film of 1975 to be treated in this second video. And this film is like a twin brother, the twin film of Invincible Power of Aikido, because once again it is a biopic, it is a biography of a founder of a Japanese martial arts style, but here we don't have the founder of Aikido, we have the founder of the Shaolin Karate, the Shorinji Kempo, which was a style quite popular during the 70s and a bit before and after. And the title of the film is The Killing Machine. That's the English title, but actually I hate this English title. I think it's not it doesn't really represent the film at all. It's very exploitation title, so I'm going to refer to the film under its Japanese name, which is Shorinji Kempo, the name of the martial arts founded by Doshinso, Doshinso being the founder of the Shorinji Kempo. And so Sonny Chiba is playing Doshinso. Let's talk a little bit about Doshinso before we dive into the film itself. Doshinso actually spent most of his childhood and young adult life in Korea and in China, in Manchuria, when it was under Japanese rule, under colonial rule for Korea, and under puppet state for Manchuria with the Manchukuo, which was formerly under the leadership of Puyi, the last Qing emperor, but who was actually controlled by Japan. And Doshinso, once he was there, he learned Kung Fu, and he mixed, when he came back to Japan at the end of the Second World War, he founded his own martial art style, the Shaolin Karate, the Shorinji Kempo, by mixing the Kung Fu he had learned in China with some elements of Jiu-Jitsu which he had learned from his grandfather, and bringing a few other personal touch, and that's how he made the Shorinji Kempo, and that's how the art became popular. Interestingly enough, we actually see Doshinso appear in a mainland Chinese martial art film that is the Shaolin Temple, which was the Chinese attempt to bring back a martial arts film in China. And why Doshinso appears in this film, it's because at the end of the 70s, when China opened up, there were some attempts to try to bring back the martial arts, the traditional martial art, because during the rule of the communists, the early rule of Mao and his followers, as it is quite the usual way in this kind of one-party state, every other kind of organization had been dissolved or taken control of, in order to make sure that there would be no opposition. And so that's what happened with martial arts, with martial arts society, and with the Shaolin Temple. So because of this policy, which lasted like almost 30 years, there was a loss of knowledge when it comes to martial arts. And so they tried to bring back some traditional masters in the Shaolin Temple, and so they invited Doshinso, and so they invited Doshinso in order to teach Shorinji Kempo at the Shaolin Temple. And he came to the Shaolin Temple at the end of the 70s, and of course when he came there were some camera who immortalized the instant, and so this visit is played at the opening of Shaolin Temple, the mainland Chinese film. Unfortunately, he ended up not being able to teach at the Shaolin Temple because he died several months after this visit to the Shaolin Temple, so that never happened. But it's interesting because it shows there was another kind of relationship between mainland China and Japan during that period of time, and Japan actually contributed greatly to the development of China during this opening policy until basically the Tiananmen events. So Doshinso, as I said, is played by Sonny Chiba, and the film is directed by Norifumi Suzuki. Norifumi Suzuki was a quite important personality in Toei. He was behind the script of many very popular films from the 60s and the 70s, and he was also a director in his own right. He was basically specialized in exploitation. That was really his thing. So basically films with a lot of violence, sex, and some kind of attitude against the authority, some kind of counter-culture attitude. With films like Sex and Fury, for example, but many others, which he did, the Sukeban series, these kind of films. So to see him helm kind of traditional, not exactly traditional, but to see him direct a film about martial art is a bit surprising, because that's not exactly his style. But actually, he did a very good job on this film. He really tried to tone it down when it comes to exploitation. There are still some exploitation elements in the film. One of the most famous is obviously the scene where Sonny Chiba is cutting the penis of a bad guy. So this one is really completely typical of Japanese exploitation of the time, but it's really just, there are very few in the film. And the film is really trying to follow the main storyline of Doshinso, how he worked, how he fought for Japan during the Second World War in China, how when he came to Japan he discovered all the difficulties that the country was facing following the war, and how he tried to create his own martial art style and try to bring things in a positive way for people around him. So it's done quite correctly, in my opinion. Of course, there are still a lot of liberties being taken with the real life of Doshinso. It's a film. There are still many things which are not really accurate. But in general, it tries to follow the main life of Doshinso, and it takes martial arts seriously. It's not just trying to sell some violent martial art action scenes. Of course there are some, but it's not the main point. The main point is really to show how people learn martial arts, the difficulty there is in learning martial arts, but also the benefits, or the positive aspects which martial arts can bring to the development of people. And Doshinso, of course, is shown in a positive light, and in my opinion that's a good thing, because that's important for martial arts to be shown under some of their positive light. We are not at the level of a low-calorie film, but still, when it comes to Japanese martial arts films, that's really one of the best, and one which treat martial arts with the most respect, in my opinion. And that's a good chance to see Sonny Chiba playing a martial art master in a positive light, contrary to Masoyama, who was shown pretty badly, in my opinion, at least shown in a very anti-hero way for at least half of the first and the second film. Here Doshinso is shown as a more positive individual, as a better role model, and I think that fits with the film, the spirit of the film, and the spirit of the martial arts being described here. And Norifumi Suzuki also take more care, I thought, during the action scenes. The action scenes are more certainly choreographed by Sonny Chiba and his Japan Action Club, but he didn't, Norifumi Suzuki didn't try to hijack them too much with crazy editing or weird framing. There is still a little bit of that. There is still a little bit of the gimmicks there was in the mise en scène during that time in Japan, but in general the fights are fairly well shot, and they show in a good light the practitioners, the martial artists, and so that makes for a perfect mix. You have good martial arts scenes, you have a great performance by Sonny Chiba, and you have a positive message about martial arts in general. And so for all these reasons, I think Shorinji Kempo is one of the best martial art Japanese film, alongside the invincible power of Aikido, which I talk about at the end of the first video. So of course, as you can see, I'm very enthusiastic about this film, and if you are a Sonny Chiba fan and you haven't watched it yet, you should immediately. That's one of his best films, one of the best films of Sonny Chiba's filmography. Now I move to 1976 with Dragon Princess, directed by Yutaka Koisa. And with Dragon Princess, we are in the same vein as Sister Street Fighter. It is once again a vehicle for Etsuko Shomi, the protégé, the student of Sonny Chiba. And Sonny Chiba as a supporting part, a small supporting part there. And it's mostly a film which is supposed to emphasize the talent and make Etsuko Shomi a martial arts star in her own right. So what is the story of Dragon Princess? We have Sonny Chiba as a karate master in New York, who is supposed to become the head instructor of the police, but there is another martial art master who wants this title and who is going to have a duel with Sonny Chiba in order to know who is worthy of that. Unfortunately, this martial art master is very cunning and very evil, and he will win this duel using some tricks. And Sonny Chiba will end up handicapped, and he will train his young daughter, played by Etsuko Shomi, in order to avenge him. And that's what she will do for the rest of the film. So what I just sum up, and that's the part of Sonny Chiba, it's basically the 15 first minutes of the film. Then Sonny Chiba pass away, his character of course, and Etsuko Shomi goes back to Japan in order to avenge her father, and that's the rest of the story. It's in the same vein as Sister Street Fighter when it comes to the ambition of the film, and it's in the same vein as Sister Street Fighter quality-wise, meaning it's a pretty good action film. It really delivers everything you want. It's fairly short, less than 90 minutes, so it goes to the point. There is just enough development of the character for you to understand their motivation and to relate and to appreciate them. And the rest is basically fights. So you really have a nice little B action movie, Japanese style, with this karate touch which was popular back then. The part of Sonny Chiba is short but quite memorable. The fight he has with the other martial art master takes place in an abandoned church, and that makes for an interesting setting. It creates quite a unique atmosphere, and so the action scene, the fight which happened there, is also quite correctly shot, and it's a pretty good action scene. And then after Sonny Chiba loses, he has, for the rest of his presence in the film, a patch on his eye, and that makes quite a striking impression. That's a very good look to him. So it's really like Sister Street Fighter. His presence enhances the film. It's really nice to have him there. You are happy, but at the same time, it doesn't take over Etsuko. It remains a movie for Etsuko Shomi, and that's her who will really shine the most. And Sonny Chiba is not going to steal the show from her. It's there to enhance the film, and so that makes for a good result on both sides. You are happy to see Sonny Chiba in the film, and at the same time you are happy that there is enough room for Etsuko Shomi to show what she's able to do, to deliver when it comes to acting, and when it comes, of course, mostly to action. And especially another aspect which makes the film very satisfying is the presence of the great Yasaki Kurata. As you have noticed from the first video of the retrospective, when I talk about Executioner, I'm a big fan of Yasaki Kurata. I really think he's a great martial artist who has a lot of charisma. And so to see him team up with Etsuko Shomi is a pleasure. They have a bit of a fight together, so that's great to be able to see these two cinema martial artists duke it out on film. It's a nice little fight, as we can expect from both of them. And after that, they will team up and they will fight all the bad guys in a final which is a bit reminiscent of what was being done in Karate Bullfighter, with a lot of tall grass, and they have to run around and try to separate the bad guys and beat them up one by one in order to reach the main bad guy of the film. A nice action sequence, fairly well handled. One little regret, but once again that's a regret which is the same as in Executioner. While Sonny Chiba and Yasaki Kurata are in this film, they don't get to fight with each other. So this part is a little bit disappointing, but still, that's still great to have a movie with Sonny Chiba, with Etsuko Shomi, and with Yasaki Kurata. It's a pretty solid B Japanese action movie, so you should certainly check it out. In 1976, Sonny Chiba was also in Karate Warriors, directed by Kazuhiko Yamaguchi. And Karate Warriors is a remake of Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with Yojimbo. If you are not, then you should check it out. Obviously, it's a movie with Toshiro Mifune, in which Toshiro Mifune is a stranger who arrived in a small town of Japan during the medieval times, and he finds two different gangs struggling in order to get the control of the city, and he's going to manipulate them in order for them to cancel each other and to try to bring peace to this little city. And this movie was actually remade several times all over the world, the most famous adaptation being done in Italy by Sergio Leone with Clint Eastwood. But there were other attempts at remaking it. One of them was with Bruce Willis, under the direction of Walter Hill. Anyway, many tried to copy the formula of Akira Kurosawa, and for good reason, because it's a very efficient formula. If you follow it, I mean, you basically have a guarantee that you will end up with a good film. At the very least, and that's what we have here with Karate Warriors, because they follow the formula of Akira Kurosawa, and you can't go wrong with that, and so that makes for an entertaining film. Sonny Chiba taking the place of Toshiro Mifune is doing a great job. He's really in his badass persona here, a bit back in the Takuma Tsurugi from the Street Fighter, not as badly intentioned as him, because here he's still trying to bring some good to the city, but still he has this anti-hero appearance. He's macho, he's tough, the way we like to see our Sonny Chiba. But of course they could not just remake the film and not do anything. They had to bring a bit of new elements into the mix, and these new elements are the setting. It's not during the medieval time, but it's during contemporary Japan, so the Japan of 1976. And also the new elements they brought were exploitation, of course, because that was the trend of Japanese cinema in the 70s. I think you already know by now, because I'm kind of saying it in every film of Sonny Chiba. I've been talking at least since Yakuza Deka in the early 70s. And so once again, that's what we have here. So in the classical Yojimbo story, we have also more violence, more sex, these kind of things we can expect from exploitation cinema, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, that works pretty well. We also have a relationship between Sonny Chiba and a young boy, which was also something fairly usual in his filmography around that time. That happened in Karate Bullfighter, in Karate Bear Fighter. This kind of orphan or small kids who get along with the hero, that was something which was quite popular at the time with the audience and with the scriptwriter. So there is a bit of that in Karate Warriors as well. That's not the best part of the film, let's be honest, but it doesn't distract that much, and the rest works pretty well. What is also noteworthy for the film is the ending. Of course, we have a big action scene at the end, a final, during which Sonny Chiba is going to show off his karate. But not only his karate, and about half of the final fight sees Sonny Chiba using a katana in order to fight his enemies. And that was something fairly new to him, because back then, as I say, that was still, the karate trend was still quite strong, and so he was mostly fist fighting. But here it shows, as I say, to use a katana, and I think that shows that he may have started to feel a bit tired to be always doing the same thing, to be always doing karate or other martial arts close to that on the big screen, and he probably wanted to show off different skills, to do some new things, and so here he used the katana. And in a way, this action scene foreshadows the rest of his career, which will start at the end of the 70s, when he will appear in a lot of period movie, when he will be in many samurai films, and he will end up using the sword much more than the fist. So here we have a little bit of the future of Sonny Chiba's career. But anyway, Karate Warriors, not the best film Sonny Chiba did in his career or during this period covered in this video, but still solid enough, pretty okay action film. Not much surprises, of course, as we already know the Yojimbo story, but decent and well made enough for you to have a good time watching it. In 1976, he also appeared in Jailbreakers, directed by Kosaku Yamashita. Jailbreakers is roughly a caper film, so films where the characters have to steal some precious objects, and so they have to mastermind some plans for that, and then they have to execute those plans. The slight difference in Jailbreakers is that instead of stealing some precious objects, they are actually stealing people. They are actually helping people to escape from prison. And so that's the character of Sonny Chiba. Is a small gangster who managed to escape from his prison, and he ends up with a gang of people specialized in rescuing people in jail. So people, members from the family, associates, friends of someone who has been convicted and who is in prison would contact this group and would pay them important sum of money, of course, in order for them to make their friends, family member evade from the jail. And so Sonny Chiba joined this group, and they will end up doing a couple of contracts like this. But at the same time, in this group, there are a lot of strong individuality, and they all want to try to take advantage from each other. So there will be a lot of internal struggle in this group. And so with this caper element, the time where they have to rescue people from prison, and this infighting into this small organization, we have a fairly entertaining and well handled when it comes to the rhythm film. Just have some reservation with the way the action is handled by the director. It's not a movie with a lot of fist fight, with a lot of action, gunfight or whatever, but there are some stunts and some chase That's mostly how the action is. And there are actually some fairly impressive stunts being done by Sonny Chiba. And I'm thinking of one of the earliest he has in the film, like in the opening of the film, where he's hanged on an helicopter through a rope, and he has to remove his clothes and change his clothes, put some other clothes on him, and you see him doing that, being hanged on the helicopter with with the rope, and you see him removing the clothes and putting some new ones. Of course, that's quite something. That's quite impressive thing to do. That's not an easy feat. And I thought that the director was not showing it in its best. He did the minimum we could expect, basically. That is a wide shot and no cut. That's it. So at least you have a rough idea, and that's really the minimum you can expect, and that's still better than completely killing the stunt by doing a crazy editing or these kind of things. So the minimum is there, but I still think there were ways to enhance it and maybe emphasize a bit more how that was Sonny Chiba doing this stunt, and how impressive and how crazy it is to do something like that. And the director doesn't do it. He plays it safe, which is still, as I said, better than trying to overdo it and at the end killing the stunt. But there were probably some ways to sell it a bit stronger, in my opinion. And there is a similar thing happening also during the end, where Sonny Chiba is climbing on the side of a truck, so a truck which is moving, a bit like the scene from Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, with the Germans who are climbing the truck in order to reach Harrison Ford. And so Sonny Chiba is doing something similar, and is going to reach the driver's seat, but then the truck is going to hit a tree, so he has to jump from the truck before he hit the tree, and that is pretty dangerous stunt. I mean, that's not that easy to do, but once again, the way it is shot, it looks very mundane. I thought once again there were maybe ways to show it in a better light and to really emphasize how tough the stunt is, how dangerous it is, and clearly show that Sonny Chiba did it himself. So it's a small shortcoming. It's, at least we have the minimum, as I said, and the film itself is quite entertaining. You are never really bored. There are some funny interactions between the members of the gang, and sometimes some of the plans in order to help people evade jail are a bit too easy to be true, but in general it's a fairly entertaining film. Once again, not the greatest in Sonny Chiba's filmography, far from it, but if you are a Sonny Chiba's fan, there is really no harm in watching Jailbreakers. You will still have a good time watching it. The last film he made in 1976 is Okinawa Yakuza War, directed by Sadao Nakajima. You should be used now to Sadao Nakajima. We already talked about him for films like Memories of a Japanese Assassination or Diary of the Last Kamikaze. And so in 1976, as there was the trend of the realistic Yakuza film kickstarted by Kinji Fukasaku with his Battle Without Honor and Humanity, Sadao Nakajima was also doing his own Yakuza film, realistic Yakuza film, and Okinawa Yakuza War is one of them. It's fairly classical. You have a Yakuza gang in Okinawa, and they are going to have to fight with some gangs coming from the main island, coming from Honshu, who wants to take over their territory. So fairly classical storyline from this kind of Jitsurogu Yakuza film. And that's where we can see, in my opinion, the difference of talent, the difference of level between someone like Sadao Nakajima and someone like Kinji Fukasaku, because the background of the film is fairly interesting. The action takes place just before the Americans are going to hand over Okinawa to the Japanese government, because after the war, the American kept their jurisdiction on Okinawa for a longer time than the main islands of Japan, and so at some point they finally gave it back to Japan. And some people were able to take advantage of this situation in order to prosper and in order to create their own traffic, their own black market stuff, and that's what some of those Yakuza from Okinawa were doing. And so this change of jurisdiction would bring some change to the way the gangs were working in Okinawa. And by choosing this context, which is a very interesting context, you can have some interesting reflection, some interesting message about the place of Okinawa in Japan. Because for those of you who are not aware of it, Okinawa was for a long time an independent kingdom, and it was actually colonized and annexed by Japan fairly recently in the early 19th century, if I remember correctly, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but anyway, that's not something extremely old. It's fairly recent event. And before that, actually, Okinawa was arguably closely connected to China than to Japan. And so by having this context, by having this story about a gang, a local Okinawa gang having to fight with the people from the main Japanese island, you can have some reflection about what it means to be from Okinawa, what Okinawa means for Japan. But actually, the movie doesn't really exploit that and just remains at the surface, and it's just a vague background, and it's just a justification for the kind of usual gang struggle that you are used to seeing in these kind of films. And I think with someone like Fukasaku, he would have been able to use this context to bring something a bit more interesting. So that's the shortcoming of the film. That's my beef with Okinawa Yakuza War. Having said that, Sadao Nakajima, as I already said in the previous video, is not a bad director by itself. He's not the level of Fukasaku, but with Fukasaku we are talking about one of the greatest Japanese directors. So he's still able to deliver the minimum we can expect. We have all the kind of betrayals, all the violent assassination and stuff like that we can expect in a film like this, and it's fairly well handled. He delivers. You have the minimum you can expect from a film like this. But the highlight of the film is without a doubt Sonny Chiba, because he's playing some kind of mad dog, a kind of a mix. There is a bit of Takuma Tsurugi from the Street Fighter once again, and a bit from the bad guy he was playing in Hiroshima Deathmatch, the second film from the Battle Without Honor or Humanity series. And there is so a combination of that playing with a bit more realistic vibe, because these movies are more realistic than the kind of alternative reality which was created by the Street Fighter. But it's basically a mix of those two characters, and he is playing it as he did with the Street Fighter fully. He's really has no problem overacting. He has no problem showing the craziness, the madness of his character, and he brings a lot of energy each time he appears on the screen. He's not actually the main character. He's not the leading part of the film. He's more like a supporting part. But a lot of the story in the film revolves around his character, so he's still quite important. And I would say that he is the most memorable character of the film, because he has so much energy. He's like a a bomb who is ready to explode at any time, that he really outshadows every other actors. And once you have finished the film, that's going to be his performance you will remember. And he got some opportunities also to show off his karate skills. The first scene of the film is basically him entering an izakaya and starting to break to break everything around him. He's full of energy. He is a bomb, always ready to explode, and that makes for something very memorable, very interesting to watch, especially if you have liked his performances in the two other films I mentioned, the Street Fighters and Hiroshima Deathmatch. You will certainly love to see him do this kind of completely crazy character once again. And it will be one of the very last time he will do this kind of extremely bad guy, over the top bad guy, with a good addition of karate. So that makes for an interesting watch, despite the shortcoming the film has, the fact that there was a potential for more. That still makes Okinawa Yakuza War an interesting film to watch. So yeah, check it out. Just be aware it doesn't deliver as much as it could have done. I moved to the year 1977, but I'm going to stay in the same genre as Okinawa Yakuza War with Hokuriku Proxy War. And this time we are back with Kinji Fukasaku, the master of the Jitsurogu, the master of the realistic Yakuza film. And as I said, once again, this movie is going to emphasize how Kinji Fukasaku is better than someone like Sadao Nakajima, because Hokuriku Proxy War is actually fairly similar in story to Okinawa Yakuza War. Instead of Okinawa, we have Hokuriku, which is a region in north of Honshu, northwest, which is a fairly snowy, harsh region of Honshu, of the main island of Japan. And same story, we have some gangs from the big city, from Tokyo, from Osaka, who wants to gain the control of the territory, and who are going to fight with the local Hokuriku gangs. So kind of the same story as Okinawa Yakuza War. And so we have the same recipe. We are going to have a lot of manipulation, of betrayal, a lot of reprisal, a lot of violence and violent assassination, these kind of things. Exactly the same ingredients that we are expected to see in a Jitsurogu film, and that we had in the Sadao Nakajima film. But what makes it better, in my opinion, is that there is a concept which remains constantly in the film from the start to the end, and that's the idea that the people from Hokuriku are strong people, and they have a very high survival sense, and they have been able to survive so long because they are living in those harsh conditions from the northeast of Japan, and that makes them tougher than the others. And that's what at the end of the film will make them be able to succeed over these people from the city. And that's really something which is present during the whole length of the film, and that's what elevates the film one level further than your basic Jitsurogu film. And that's really what makes, in my opinion, Fukasaku the best, because he always have one idea like this, one concept which is going to illustrate in the film, and that's what he did in many of his films of the period, and that's what makes his film more interesting than the other Yakuza film made by other directors during that period. And so Hokuriku Proxy War is once again a great Yakuza film, a great Jitsurogu film by Kinji Fukasaku. If you have liked The Battle Without Honor or Humanity, if you have liked the new Battle Without Honor and Humanity, you will like Hokuriku Proxy War. And as you can see, I'm a big fan of Fukasaku, and I cannot sing his praise enough to have been able to do so many great Yakuza films during such a short period of time, basically from 72, 73 until now 77. That's incredible that he managed to do so many great films, and he didn't get tired before that. It's a bit like Choryun, who was doing a lot of Gulong adaptation for the Shaw Brothers at the end of the 70s until the early 80s. He did a great job at the beginning, but at the end, of course, he got a bit tired of that. And Kenichi Fukasaku managed to keep his inspiration high for this period of 5 years. And that's the case once again here with Hokuriku Proxy War. When it comes to Sonny Chiba is not the main character, is not the leading part of the film. He has a supporting part. He's playing a powerful Yakuza boss who is going to try to strike a peace between the gangs, but at the same time try to take advantage of the situation for his own benefit, because in the Yakuza movie of Fukasaku, nobody is really abiding by the Yakuza law, and they are all greedy bastards. And so that's what he's playing, and he's doing it with all the authority needed for the part. So it's great in the film. But what I find the most interesting in Hokuriku Proxy War is his appearance, because each time he appears, he's wearing this kind of fancy suits, fancy coats. He has a mustache, which is the first time that he has a mustache in films. He also has tinted glasses. And this appearance, which is perfectly fit for the character he's playing, but this appearance is going to be the appearance he will have in the later stage of his life. So roughly from the early 90s, I would say, until now, each time you will see Sonny Chiba in a convention, in interview, or whatever social events, he will appear in this kind of fancy suits, a mustache, and tinted glasses. That's his style. So it's interesting to see him already have this style set in 1977, and it would become his usual persona outside of cinema. So it's a bit like Karate Warriors, which was foreshadowing the future of Sonny Chiba's career with his use of katana, and here we have the future of the civilian Sonny Chiba for the years to come, starting from the 90s. So that's interesting to see him in this film for that alone. But as I said, that's a great Jitsurogu, a great film by Kenichi Fukasaku, so you should also watch it for this reason. And so there is a strong recommendation from me on Hokuriku Proxy War. You should watch it, obviously. So as I said, that's incredible that Kenichi Fukasaku managed to keep his inspiration so high for so long, doing films on the same kind of subject. But actually 1977 is the year where you are going to finally feel a bit of tiredness in him in dealing with this kind of modern cops and gangsters stories. And the last hurrah for him was Hokuriku Proxy War in this kind of genre. And the start of the fall, in my opinion, is another film he did this year of 1977, and that's Doberman Cop. Doberman Cop, which is an adaptation of a manga, and Doberman Cop, the main character, is played by Sonny Chiba. So who is this Doberman Cop? He is a guy from Okinawa who is sent to Tokyo in order to solve the disappearance of an Okinawan girl. And so he's going to work with the Tokyo police in order to solve this case. And the whole concept of the film is that he's basically a country bumpkin. He doesn't really know the way the big city works. He's a bit a peasant, and so he is not very. It's a bit rough. He doesn't know really how to deal with the people from the city, and that's going to be the source of the comedy of the film. but at the same time, while he has this appearance, while he doesn't really know the convention of the city, he's still someone very smart. He's still someone who is a very good policeman, and he will outsmart most of the people from the big city. So that's the concept of the Doberman Cop, and it's not a bad concept by itself. It could work, but you can feel that Fukasaku didn't really manage to make the story his own, and I think it has less to do with the character of the Doberman Cop and more to do with the rest of the story, the story of the disappearance of the young girl, which is connected to the abuse in the Japanese show business, and all this story is not very interesting. It's a bit generic. There is nothing really that interesting about it. It feels more like it was an attempt to make the main actress playing the part of the girl who had disappeared, to try to transform her into a star, but it's a bit superficial. It's a bit like an idol, and it doesn't really work, and we are never really that into the story of her disappearance and the story of the abuse that happened in the show business. There could have been something there, but it just doesn't come out the way we wanted, on the way I guess Kinji Fukasaku wanted it. So it's a bit disappointing film to watch. Sonny Chiba is doing his part well enough, but even him, we are never really completely into his character, in my opinion. He's doing his job okay, but he cannot really make the movie great just by himself. There is a few action scenes, a few stunts that he delivers, so it's okay, no problem there. It's nice to see him do them, but we have seen better elsewhere, and so that doesn't really save the film, which is not a stinker. It's not a complete disappointment. It's still watchable, but you can feel that Kinji Fukasaku may better stop doing this kind of modern cops and gangster story, and he should go into another direction, which he actually would end up doing, and that's something we will talk a bit later. And that's something we will talk about a bit later. There are 3 more films to talk about for this year, 1977, and they are all action films or martial art films. And the first one I'm going to talk about is called Soul of Shiba, also called Soul of Bruce Lee, depending on who you want to market the most, I guess. And for this film we have 2 directors, and they are Chen Tung-man and Yukio Noda. Yukio Noda being the director of Yakuza Deka. And Chen Tung-man being the father of another more famous director, Peter Chan, the director of He's a Woman, She's a Man, of Comrades, Almost a Love Story, of Warlords. So a pretty good Hong Kong director, very good Hong Kong director actually. Unfortunately, his father was not as good as his son, or so it seems, based on Soul of Shiba. Still, Soul of Shiba is an interesting film to watch, even if it is for the wrong reasons. Soul of Shiba is, as you can guess, one of the very few times that Sonny Chiba did a Hong Kong film. The film is set and shot in Thailand, but that was a fairly usual thing to do for Hong Kong filmmakers back then. But Soul of Shiba is at last an opportunity to see Sonny Chiba in a Hong Kong film when Hong Kong was the apex, was the best place to be in order to do martial art films. So that's an opportunity to see how Sonny Chiba would fare into this martial arts mecca, martial arts filmmaking mecca. But it seems like the movie had a lot of problems because the story doesn't make sense. There are some some storylines which are started and then which got forgotten. So at the beginning, the film seems to be dealing with the aftermath of the Second World War, but that's something which will be completely forgotten. The character of Sonny Chiba is kind of a drug addict, but it's never clearly stated why, and it's never very clear how it affects the main story. There is a story of revenge also, which once again is not well handled and which is not really reached to a satisfying conclusion. So it's a mess. It's basically a mess. And unfortunately, we don't have many information about what happened behind the scene on this film, why it was such a troubled production. And I would really like to know more. I would like to investigate more on that, but I'm not sure I will have the opportunity to do so, because most of the people now involved in this film have either passed away or they are far from Hong Kong. So it's going to be difficult for me to investigate, but I will try when I have the opportunity, because I would really like to know what happened behind the scene. The fact that there are two directors credited make me think that the first director was probably Chan Tung Man, and Yukio Noda was probably called as a reinforcement by Sonny Chiba, because they were used to work with each other, and in order to help with the shooting, or maybe to finish the shooting or to do an additional shooting. I'm not exactly sure, as I say, what happened, but that's not a good sign when you have two directors credited on the film, and I don't think they worked alongside each other. So it probably came later, and I believe so, especially because there are two main stories happening at the same time in the film, one with Sonny Chiba and one with another character, and they almost are never connected to each other. So it looks like they took the footage of one film and put it in another and try to connect them, a bit like what IFD, the Joseph Lai Godfrey company, would do much later with their ninja films. So there is a bit of this vibe in this film. So it's really like an industrial accident. You can see that there have been a lot of problems in this film, and that's unfortunate, of course. But at the same time, it gives an opportunity to see Sonny Chiba in another kind of environment and having to adapt to a different style of action. The style of action is kind of a mix. It's not exactly your pure Hong Kong film style, but it's not exactly the pure Japanese style either. So there is a bit of the two aspects coexisting in the film. But you can see that Sonny Chiba has all the martial arts skills, all the physicality needed in order to manage to follow the Hong Kong style choreography. And so there is a bit of sadness that he never had the opportunity to work with the elite of the action director of the time, the Sammo Hung, the Lau Kar-leung, the Yuen Woo-ping of the time, because I think he would have done great. He would have managed to deliver. He would have managed to do what those great filmmakers wanted, and that would have been great to see him give his best martial art wise like this. But unfortunately, we in order to do that, in order to see that, we have to cope with Soul of Shiba, which is this weird industrial accident, as I said. Still better than nothing, I guess, but it's quite a disappointment. Let's be clear. Don't expect, if you want to watch this film, don't expect a good film. It's not a good film by itself. It's just that you have some glimpse of another path that Sonny Chiba could have taken if he had been more involved into Hong Kong productions. And this Hong Kong connection would play up in another film he did in 1977, which is Golgo 13 Kowloon Assignment. Golgo 13 is an adaptation of a manga which had been made by Takao Saito, and there had been actually another film adaptation a few years before this one by Junya Sato. So Junya Sato, the director of Super Express or The Last Kamikaze, so we already talked a bit about him. And he did an adaptation of Golgo 13 with Kenta Kakura in the part of Golgo 13, which was shot mostly in Iran, of all the places, of course, before the Islamic Revolution. That was not completely convincing film, and actually this one I think is a much better adaptation of Golgo 13. So who is Golgo 13? So his real name is Duke Togo, and he is an elite killer, someone who is extremely good with weapons, who is a top-notch martial artist, and he's going to do some contracts killing bad guys for money all over the world. He's going to be hired and go in missions all over the world. So it's a kind of dark version, outlaw version of James Bond, to put it simply. And Sonny Chiba is very good in the part. I think he is more convincing as Duke Togo than Kenta Kakura. He has this physicality, he has this raw charisma, which is really needed for the character. Kenta Kakura is a very good actor, of course, in his own name, and he managed to do okay, but I think that fits much better with an actor like Sonny Chiba. The film was shot for almost half of it in Hong Kong, and they had the help of a small local Hong Kong company in order to help with the shooting, to do the location scouting, to do the casting. And the main guy behind this company is actually the co-star of Golgo 13 Kowloon Assignment, and that's Callan Leung. Callan Leung was kind of a trendy actor. He was a newcomer, but he was seen as someone who would become a big star in the Hong Kong film industry. He was the main actor, he was the leading part of Jumping Ash being one of the first modern cop and gangster films from Hong Kong. And so it's interesting to see him play alongside Sonny Chiba, to have this confrontation of the personification of the modern Hong Kong cop and gangster films with Sonny Chiba, the symbol of Japanese action films, and to have them in the same film. It's also great to see Sonny Chiba walking around Hong Kong. He already had been in Hong Kong for the film Tokyo, Seoul, Bangkok, which I mentioned, I think, in the previous video, which is a movie he did in 1973, if I remember correctly, an international production where he was doing action all over Asia, and he had a short stopover in the film in Hong Kong, but that was very short. And so here we finally got to see him really having action scenes, really do things in Hong Kong, and that's a great sight. It's really nice to see him there. There are also interestingly two action scenes which I think influenced Hong Kong filmmakers later, and I'm thinking of the scene where Duke Togo has to snipe a criminal during the opening of a swimming competition. And so you would have Duke Togo preparing for his murder, preparing for his assassination with his sniping rifle, and you would have the other guy doing his speech, preparing for opening this competition. And this scene is very similar to what John Woo would do 15 years later, or a bit less than that, 10 years later, with The Killer, and during the scene in which Chow Yun-fat is on a boat during the Dragon Boat Festival, and he's going to snipe a guy, and that's basically the same kind of construction. Of course, the John Woo one, the Killer one, is better than in this Golgo 13 Kowloon Assignment, because John Woo is a better director than Yuki Onoda. But still, you can see that the inspiration may have come from this film, and it's a fairly okay scene in its own right in the Japanese film. And another scene which seems to have inspired a Hong Kong filmmaker is the scene during which Sonny Chiba is on the top of one of the double-decker bus, and he has to catch some kind of a neon sign, the kind of neon sign that Hong Kong had a lot during that time. There are much less nowadays, unfortunately. And he catches it, and he gets back to the ground like this. And I think that inspired Jackie Chan for his stunts in Police Story 1 and 2. Of course, the famous bus scene in the first Police Story, but I'm mostly thinking about the second Police Story, in the scene in which he's jumping from one truck to another and then jumping into some kind of building. And so this scene, I think, may have been inspired by what Sonny Chiba did in Golgo 13 Kowloon Assignment. And it's a pretty impressive stunt from Sonny Chiba. I mean, it's clearly shot. You can see it's one shot, so you can clearly see that he did it himself. And it's quite a dangerous thing to do. And kudos to him to have done it for this film. And that helps make Golgo 13 a pretty good action film, Japanese style, but with a bit of this Hong Kong vibe, and that helps to make the film a bit better than your average action film of the time. The last action film, the last martial art film for Sonny Chiba of this year, 1977, is Karate for Life. It's the last episode of the karate series, the Mas Oyama series, so the last film about Masatsu Oyama, the Kyokushinkai master, the founder of the Kyokushinkai style. And this one is directed by Kazuhiko Yamaguchi. What is interesting to note there is that contrary to what was happening in Japanese cinema back then, when they were doing series at a hectic speed, and when there was a popular film, they would do a sequel in the 3 to 4 months which followed. And that's what happened with the two first Karate Bullfighter, Karate Bear Fighter. Karate Bear Fighter was produced very quickly after the success of the first film, and that's why we end up on many of those Japanese series with variations of the story of the first film. But for Karate for Life, as you can notice, they took their time. For a change, they really took their time. They took almost 2 years in order to do this third installment, and so that made the scriptwriters able to try to bring something different. So we don't have in this film Mas Oyama fighting against a violent beast, as that was the case in the two first films. Unfortunately, this time they had to come up with new story and something better. Don't seem to have been used that wisely, because the story of Karate for Life is not great. Is not great at all. It all revolves around, of course, some kind of gangsters. But the main point here is the opposition between the karate of Masatsu Oyama and wrestlers, American wrestlers. So American wrestlers are shown in this film as the ultimate opponent there can be for a traditional karate martial art master, which may seem to be a weird idea, but it's not that weird if you take it back into the context the film was made. So in 1976, so 1 year before Karate for Life, there had been a very important event into the martial art world, and that was a fight between Muhammad Ali, the very famous heavyweight English boxing champion, and with Antonio Inoki, a very popular Japanese wrestler. That fight happened in Japan, and it was a big deal. There was a huge advertising campaign. I mean, there was a huge buzz around it. Unfortunately, it didn't really deliver, because the fight was under some weird rules, and it was a snooze fest. You basically had Antonio Inoki on the ground trying to bait Muhammad Ali to come to him, and Muhammad Ali refusing to do so and waiting for him to stand up, and that's basically the fight for the full extent of its length. So it's really a snooze fest. I mean, there is basically nothing happening during that fight. You can check it out on YouTube. I'm pretty sure it's there in its full length if you want to torture yourself. So it was a bad fight, but it was important in trying to bring this opposition of style, trying to bring an environment where people of different martial art disciplines could fight against each other and try to show which style, which master was the best. And that's basically the origin of the mixed martial arts competitions, and that's what would start the Pride Fighting Championship, which was the biggest mixed martial arts organization in the world, and which was in Japan at the end of the 90s, early 2000, and where you would have Japanese wrestlers, so real Japanese wrestlers doing wrestling, so fake fighting, and who would come in this kind of competition in order to prove themselves and to prove to the people that wrestling could be used in real fight and could be efficient, and some indeed made some great career there. And so you had the origin of that in this Antonio Inoki Muhammad Ali fight, and that's obviously the inspiration for Karate for Life, for the scriptwriters to pit Masoyama, this karate master, against those American wrestlers. And it could have been, if it had been faithful to this opposition of style, I think it could have been interesting, but it's done in a very, once again, comic book style. The wrestlers are like comic book characters, and the character of Masoyama is still not really that respectful to the real persona of Masoyama. So we end up having something which is a very disappointing product, unfortunately. While there is potential, you can see there is potential for something more interesting, but they failed. They didn't deliver. Still, the film is interesting because I think Sonny Chiba was feeling that it was going to be the end of the karate trend, and that's indeed the case. 1977 is basically the end of this karate trend in Japan, and as I guess Chiba was aware of that, he kind of tries to deliver the most interesting, the most ambitious action scenes, karate scenes of his career, and he put them under the light of the man who was the origin of this trend, and that is Bruce Lee. So in Karate for Life, you have two action scenes which are obviously inspired by Bruce Lee, and that's a way for Sonny Chiba, I think, to show that he is able to do as good as Bruce Lee himself. And so the two scenes in question are the opening of the film, in which Sonny Chiba arrives in a dojo and starts beating up everybody around. That's the scene which I've put at the beginning of this video, and it's a great scene. It's indeed very nice to see Sonny Chiba doing his thing, showing off his martial arts skills to the max. The direction is a bit typical of the Japanese martial arts style of the time, so you have a lot of zoom and things like this, which are not necessarily the best tools for this kind of martial art film, but still it's not too bad. It's still well shot enough to emphasize the martial arts skills of Sonny Chiba and to make for a pretty good martial arts action scene. And so it's great to see Sonny Chiba play with this Bruce Lee inspiration and try to do his own take on it. And the other scene is the final of the film, which is very close to what we have in Enter the Dragon, with the mirror scene, the fight with Sekkin, with all the mirrors, and there is a bit of that at the end of Karate for Life. And so once again, it's interesting to see Sonny Chiba play around these Bruce Lee ideas and do his own take on them. For this reason alone, Karate for Life is recommended. I mean, you should watch it if you like Sonny Chiba, the martial artist, but it is a bit of a disappointment once again. Better, of course, than Karate Bear Fighter, but it highlights how frustrating this Karate Masoyama Karate trilogy is. A lot of potential, a lot of things which could have been done, and there are still some satisfying action scenes there and there, but a lot of wasted potential in my opinion. I almost forgot to talk about one last film for this year, 1977, but as you will see, it's a fairly minor film for Sonny Chiba because he only has a very short, very small cameo, and that is The Visitor in the Eye, directed by Nobuhiko Obayashi. Nobuhiko Obayashi, you may be familiar with him because he is the director of the cult classic House. Really a great film, really crazy film, cult classic for good reasons, and so you should check it out if you haven't watched it yet. But Nobuhiko Obayashi actually had an extensive career. He directed many films, and it's not that known in the West. He's mostly remembered as the director from House being his very first film actually. And The Visitor in the Eye is his second film, and it was an adaptation of a manga by Osamu Tezuka being the god of Japanese manga, and that is Blackjack. So Blackjack is a character created by Osamu Tezuka, who is some kind of extremely talented doctor who will intervene in some extreme case on some very weird disease, some very dangerous surgical operation, these kind of things, and he will come to save the day. And in this case, the character of Blackjack is played by Joe Shishido. Joe Shishido being this actor with hamster, with this kind of, with the big cheeks like this, who was very popular with Seijun Suzuki's film in the 60s. And so he's playing Blackjack, and he's doing a good job. He brings a bit of meanness to the character, which is interesting, and he really looks the part. I mean, they gave him the classical outfit of Blackjack. The only problem maybe is wig. He has a huge wig of white hair, and it's maybe not the best part, but otherwise he looks the part and he does a good job as Blackjack. The problem though is that Blackjack is more like a supporting part in the film, and the film concentrates actually on the one who needs the service of Blackjack, who is a young student, a young female student, who has an accident when she plays tennis. She receives a tennis ball in her eye, and she is on the verge of losing her sight. And so Blackjack is asked to take care of her and to transplant an eye into her, which he does, and which is successful, except that after this success, this operation, the poor girl starts to have some visions. She sees different things, and among the things she sees, there is a mysterious man of who she falls in love. And I'm not going to say what there is more behind that, but there is a doubt of what are those visions. Do they mean something, or is it just some random vision? Here lies, in my opinion, the problem of the film is that there is a long development about how this has she become crazy, or have this vision a meaning. And of course you can expect that there will be some meaning behind it, but the movie takes its time to really go in this direction and really spend a lot of time trying to make you doubt about her sanity, mental health, and I think it's overplayed, and it doesn't help to keep the movie fast enough. The movie is pretty long, and I think it should have been shortened and go a bit more to the point than what it is. And so because of that, the movie drags a bit, and I think the character of the girl is not that interesting, and that makes it a bit tiring to watch. The part when Blackjack arrives are interesting, and they bring a bit more energy, and they make the film more interesting, especially as Obayashi uses his visual sense to create some kind of weird, surreal atmosphere, but there are not enough of that, in my opinion, to sustain the story of the film, and that's too bad. It's not a bad film per se, of course it's still watchable, but it could have been better in my opinion. And in this movie we have Etsuko Shomi, the protege of Sonny Chiba, playing a completely dramatic part. She's a supporting actress. She's playing the best friend of the victim, and she's doing a good job. She shows that she can be something else than an action actress, and so I think that's nice to see her in this film. And she probably ended up in the film through Sonny Chiba, because back then Sonny Chiba, being the big boss of the Jack Pig, the big man behind these young actors, he was usually the one you had to deal with in order for them to appear in other films. And so I guess that's what happened here. That's through Sonny Chiba that Etsuko Shomi was hired to play this part. And I guess as a signature to show that he was involved, he has this very short cameo where he's playing a drunk. So it's really like a couple of seconds. He's a drunk in a street, and he's a bit too aggressive with one of the girls, and that's it. You have your Sonny Chiba cameo. So it's kind of funny to see him doing that, but there is really not much else to be said about his performance there. So The Visitor in the Eye, last film of 1977, bit of a disappointing adaptation of Osamu Tezuka manga. We move to 1978, and 1978 will be a year of collaboration between the two good friends that are Sonny Chiba and Kinji Fukasaku, and it will also be the year for both men to try to stride into a new direction, a new orientation to their career, to do something different from what they had done the previous years. And one of the film in this new direction is called Shogun Samurai, also called as the Yagyu clan conspiracy, and it was a Toei production, a big ambitious Toei production with a huge cast, with a huge budget, and it was a comeback for Toei into serious samurai film. And in my opinion, it was a success, and it was a first also for Kinji Fukasaku, who had not really done many period film, if not any, before in his career. So that was kind of new on many levels. And the main character is Sonny Chiba, but it is more like a choir film, so with a lot of different actors involved, and they all have important parts. And the most important is Sonny Chiba, but still you can't say he's the main star of the film, because there are many other actors who have important parts as well. The film is set during the succession of the first or second, I'm not completely sure anymore, but first or second of the Tokugawa Shogun, and so you have a lot of infighting in the Tokugawa family and the clans around in order to know who is going to take the succession. And Sonny Chiba is playing Yagyu Jubei, a famous ninja master who will help his own master to become the new shogun. Sonny Chiba has a great look in this film. He has his hair tied in the back a bit up, and he has also a patch on the eye, and it makes for a very striking, very strong appearance. If you are into video games, you will probably be familiar with the way he looks, because there is a character in the famous Samurai Shodown action video game named Yagyu Jubei, and that's exactly Sonny Chiba in this film. They basically took the appearance of Sonny Chiba from this film, and they made it a video game character for the Samurai Shodown series. The movie is quite long. It has a lot of different intrigues, a lot of betrayals and stuff like this. So it's a bit some kind of a period version of the Battle Without Honor and Humanity series, but I think it works pretty well. You have the energy from Kinji Fukasaku that you can expect. He managed to bring it in this very formal setting, and the movie is visually gorgeous. You have a lot of charismatic actors, so that makes for a real nice period film, real nice samurai film with a bit more of a modern touch to it. And Sonny Chiba, as I said, is striking in his character, and he is ruthless, he is without mercy, and so that makes it quite memorable, and it makes for a very good film in my opinion. Unfortunately, contrary to most of the film I've been talking about since I've been doing this retrospective, I've tried to rewatch some of those films in order to have interesting things to say on this video, and that's a film which I watched a long time ago and I haven't been able to rewatch. Unfortunately, I would really like to have, but I didn't manage to find it back, and my DVD is stuck in France. So I'm talking from my memory of it here, and I hope I'm not, I haven't changed my opinion since. But as far as I remember, that was really a great film, and one of the best Fukasaku film in my opinion, and so also one of the most memorable performance from Sonny Chiba. So of course you should check it out. Another attempt for the two men of doing something a bit different in this year 1978 was A Message from Space, a Star Wars ripoff from the Toei. I already talked a little bit about this film in the video I did about the influence of Star Wars on Asian cinema, but I'm still going to talk a little bit, to repeat a bit of the information I gave back then. And so Message from Space was done by Toei with the intention of outsmarting Star Wars. Star Wars had been a big success in the US, obviously, and it was going to be released in Japan, but it was going to be released much later compared to the American release. It was going to be released in the mid 1978, and so the Japanese executive took advantage of this late release date in order to produce their own version and to try to take advantage of it and try to capitalize and get the success of this new space opera genre to their own benefit. And so Toho did so with their own attempt, which was unsuccessful, and Toei did it with Message from Space, which was much more successful commercially and also arguably artistically. Message from Space sees some kind of empire, evil space empire taking over different planets, killing people around, and so you have the Felucia planet, so a planet trying to survive, and they will ally with some people from Earth, and all together they will fight this evil empire and of course succeed. And Sonny Chiba is playing some kind of legitimate heir to the evil empire, who has been banned and who will join forces with the human, with the people from Earth and from Felucia, in order to get rid of the evil king and take his right place as the heir of his empire and bring back peace to the galaxy. And the film is, I personally, I kind of like Message from Space. I think it's a nice little ripoff of Star Wars. You have what you can expect from space opera, some nice space battle, which are quite well shot. The special effects, I think, are still up to date. I mean, they managed to deliver the kind of action, space action scenes that you want to see. You have an interesting cast with Sonny Chiba, with Hiroyuki Sanada, who is now an adult and so is able to become an action star and a young star in his own right. You have also Etsuko Shiomi. You have different people from the Toei stable, like Mikio Narita, which is an actor I really like. And you have also some washed up Hollywood actor in Vic Morrow, and some young Hollywood newcomers, American newcomers. And so you have all that together. It's a weird mix, but I think it works okay in order to make an entertaining Star Wars-like film. And Sonny Chiba himself is doing a good job as this heir to the throne, despite having some interesting costume, let's put it, an interesting makeup, let's put it this way. But it works fairly well. Interestingly enough, while Sonny Chiba didn't suffer much wounds during his action career, one of his most serious wounds he received was on Message from Space. There is an action scene at the end where he has to jump under a closing door, and unfortunately the door ended up on his ankle and broke his ankle. So that was one of his most serious wounds, and that happened on Message from Space. So that makes for a memorable film for him, I guess. So it's not a great film by any standards, but it amongst the Star Wars ripoff, I still think it's one of the best, and still very entertaining to this day. So those two films were fairly original in the career of Kinji Fukasaku and Sonny Chiba, but they did another one called The Fall of Ako Castle, which is much less original because it's another retell of the famous story of the 47 Ronins. So the 47 Ronin is a real story. It happened during the Tokugawa Shogun, one of the Tokugawa Shogun, and that was a lord which was punished for bad behavior in Kyoto or Edo, can't remember exactly. Anyway, he was punished. He lost his fief, he lost his rank, his title, and all the samurai who were serving under him also lost theirs. And they found it unfounded, they found it was unfair, and they pretended to go back to a civilian life and to forget about what happened, but actually they plotted their revenge, and after several years pretending to have forgotten about the event, they fulfilled the revenge they had plotted for so many years, and they killed the guy who they thought was responsible for the fall of their lord. And that was a famous story. That was something which was talked about a lot in Japan, and there was a bit of a problem for the Tokugawa shogun at the time, because it was seen as a symbol of what should be done under the rule of Bushido. But at the same time, if people were doing these kind of things, it was a problem for the authority of the shogun. So at the end, they find a balance by having them doing seppuku. So this way they kind of kept their honor, but at the end, at the same way, they were also punished for their action. And so that was a way to find a balance between the loyalty of the samurai, which was considered good, and still keeping the authority of the shogun. And this event inspired a lot of writers, a lot of people in the creative industry in Japan at the time, and that has been a story which has been adapted many times since on cinema, and it has even been adapted by Hollywood several times, and I talk about it in my short video about The Last Samurai, so you can check about that. But anyway, The Fall of Ako Castle is one of these adaptation. Unfortunately, Kinichi Fukasaku didn't have the full creative control on the film. He wanted to mix it with some fantasy elements and to do something a bit different from the usual, but he was not allowed by the studio and by the main star of the film, and so he ended up doing a fairly generic adaptation of the story. I still think it's okay, it's perfectly watchable, and it has the good taste of being fairly short compared to other adaptations of this story. Many of those stories are very long, and I think over long in my opinion. And so in this case, he managed to make it a bit shorter and make it a bit more violent, to put a bit more intrigue. So in my opinion, he made it a bit better than your average adaptation. But having said that, that remains very classic, very predictable on many levels. And so that's of the film of the year 1978. I think that's the weakest. It's okay. It's your typical samurai film with a little bit better rhythm, with a slightly more interesting than the average, I would say, but not that great either. Sonny Chiba is at the image of the film. I mean, he is doing a solid performance. There is no problem with his performance, but it doesn't save the film, doesn't make the film better for that. So of the film of the year 1978, in my opinion, that's one of his weakest. Sonny Chiba also appeared in another film in 1978, and that is Yokohama Underworld Machine Gun Dragon by Akihisa Okamoto. So a great title, Yokohama Underworld Machine Gun Dragon, a great title obviously, but for a film which is not really great. It's another attempt at doing a Jitsurogu, so a Yakuza realistic film, but this kind of genre was losing steam severely. And so they tried to make it more interesting by bringing more comedy, but it doesn't really work that well in my opinion. The main star of the film is not Sonny Chiba, it's Bunta Sugawara, so the star of the Battle Without Honor and Humanity series. And I think it's great when he's playing this kind of tough Yakuza. But here it's not exactly that. He's playing a small-time gangster working with his mother in order to, it's more like a con artist, so scamming people and stealing their money. And in this case, his mother and him steal the money from a Yakuza gang, and they end up being hunted by this Yakuza gang who wants to get their money back. But as I said, the mix of comedy and drama doesn't work that well. There is also a very weird relationship between Bunta and his mother. It's almost incestuous, but it's never very clear if the director wanted it to be like this or if it's just badly handled. It's supposed to be a strong relationship between the two, but it's just so badly handled it looks like incest. It's very weird, and it doesn't really make for a pleasant relationship and a pleasant film, in my opinion. On Sonny Chiba, he has a very small cameo. At some point, Bunta on a undercover cop goes see Sonny Chiba, because Sonny Chiba is playing someone specialized in counterfeiting, and they want to buy a counterfeit passport from him. And Sonny Chiba is giving them the merchandise, but he also informed Bunta Sugawara that the guy he has befriended is actually an undercover cop. So it's a bit of a deus ex machina to give an information to the main character, which it seems like he would not have been able to get otherwise. So it's not that important cameo, but at the very least we see Sonny Chiba do a few karate moves, because he beat up the undercover cop. So at least we got to see that. That's a nice little addition. But it doesn't save the film from being a failure, in my opinion, from being a disappointing effort. And obviously it's not a must in Sonny Chiba's career, as it is just a very small cameo there. We move to 1979. 1979 sees Sonny Chiba work with one of the masters of Japanese cinema in the first collaboration between the two men, and as far as I remember the only one they did together, and that is Hideo Gosha for Hunter in the Dark. So Hunter in the Dark is the story actually not really of Sonny Chiba himself, but of a character played by Tatsuya Nakadai. Tatsuya Nakadai being one of the legendary Japanese actor who has worked with all the great masters of Japanese cinema. And in here he is playing some kind of Yakuza. The film is set during the Tokugawa Shogun, and he's playing some kind of Yakuza boss who meets a samurai who has lost his memory, a Ronin who has lost his memory, and is taking him to his gang and using him as his kind of bodyguard and man of action. Unfortunately, this Ronin has a very heavy past, and this past is going to come back haunt him in some kind of manipulation and political intrigue. The movie is a bit hard to follow at the beginning because there are a lot of political intrigue in the background, and it takes some time before you finally understand how they all play out. But if you manage to remain concentrated on what is being told and you finally get it, you will enjoy the film because it's a very, very well made samurai film, as you can expect from Hideo Gosha. Sonny Chiba is playing one of the main antagonists. You have one big mastermind of the events, but the guy is just the one with manipulating everybody, and his main man of action is played by Sonny Chiba. So the main antagonist you will see during the film is Sonny Chiba, and he's great in the part. He has a great presence. He has a lot of physical charisma, I would say. I mean, each time he appears, you can really feel the screen. You can really see that he's going to be the guy in charge, and he's going to be a force to reckon with. So that's a great performance from him, and Hideo Gosha really highlight his presence very well. As I said, as he's playing the main bad guy, he's not the main actor, and he's like, I would say he appears in 1/3 of the film, but the film itself being pretty good and his presence being great, that makes for a pretty strong recommendation. There is an interesting aspect, I think, when it comes to the final of the film, which is a duel between Sonny Chiba and Tatsuya Nakadai. First, what the duel itself takes place in a chicken farm, and that's a fairly unusual set to do this kind of duel. So that's interesting by itself. But I also think that this idea was taken by Frankie Chan, the director of Outlaw Brothers, for his own final. So Frankie Chan was a big fan of Japanese cinema, and he didn't hesitate to borrow ideas from them, and I think he did so. He did borrow this idea from Hunter in the Dark for his own final on Outlaw Brothers. But more interestingly, this fight between Tatsuya Nakadai and Sonny Chiba, I personally see it as a transitional fight between two different eras of samurai films. So you had the samurai film of the big masters of Japanese cinema, the Akira Kurosawa, the Masaki Kobayashi, who are here taken shape through Tatsuya Nakadai. Tatsuya Nakadai is the representative of these great masters of Japanese cinema. And you have this new trend of Japanese action cinema in Sonny Chiba, in the representative of the Japan Action Club. And here you have these two symbols of two different eras of Japanese cinema fighting against each other. And you can see that Tatsuya Nakadai is completely overpowered by Sonny Chiba. I think that's partly faithful to the characters they are playing, but it's not completely on purpose. I think it's just that Sonny Chiba was a much more physically impressive specimen than Tatsuya Nakadai, and Tatsuya Nakadai was a great actor. He's a great actor. He's one of the greatest actors, actually. But he's not that physical when it comes to fencing, when it comes to sword mastery. And you can see the difference. You can see that this style of action by Sonny Chiba, the Japan action style, action club style, is really overpowering the old style of the classic samurai films of the 60s or the 50s. And so that's an interesting thing to see, this change of generation, this change of style, which is symbolized by this duel between these two legendary actors. 1979 saw also Sonny Chiba work 2 times with Toru Murakawa, and Toru Murakawa was kind of a popular director back then, especially for his collaboration with Yusaku Matsuda. Murakawa was the director who made Yusaku Matsuda a big star in Japan. Yusaku Matsuda being more famous in the West for having played Sato in Black Rain. I already talked a little bit about it in the video about Black Rain, which I did, which you should check if you haven't yet. And so he did 2 films in which Sonny Chiba was involved. And the first one is called Dead Angle. It's an adaptation of a book, and it deals with a group of characters at the end of the war who are taking advantage of the loophole in the law in Japan under the leadership of American, and then when Japan get back its sovereignty, its full sovereignty, there were still some problems with the law, with changing the law, with adapting the law to the new situation. And so the characters in Dead Angle take advantage of this loophole to do all kind of traffic, taking advantage of this gray area to make a lot of money for themselves. It's an interesting concept. It's fairly original, but to be honest, it's hard to follow as it is quite technical, all the law involved, and you really need to understand what is happening there, and it's not that clear. And in order to make it understandable, there are a lot of dialogues, and so sometimes the rhythms suffer from it. They are like a tunnel of dialogues, which are not to the benefit of the film, in my opinion. It's hard, probably. I mean, you can see the origin of the film being a book, and it probably plays out better as a book than a film. It's an interesting attempt, but in my opinion, not a very satisfying one at the end. Sonny Chiba is playing some kind of small Yakuza boss who is going to help the main character. Is basically the muscles for them when they need some kind of action. He would be the one taking part, the one doing it. He's doing a good job, of course. I mean, he's used to this kind of parts, so there is no problem with his performance. But he doesn't appear that much. He is there quite a bit in the first third of the film, but the more the film move on, the less we see him, and that's not really to the benefit of the film. I think maybe if he had a part a bit bigger, a bit more interesting, that could have helped the film, but that's not the case, and that's a bit disappointing. But there is actually another actor who is worth mentioning, who is not Sonny Chiba, but that's Edward James Olmos. You may be familiar with him for his part in Blade Runner. He's the unicorn guy, the origami unicorn guy in Blade Runner, and later he was the captain from the Galactica, the second version of Galactica. And here he was extremely young, and that's really interesting to see him being in a Japanese film. He's actually very good, and that's not a given when you have American actors in Japanese films. That's not a given that they would give great performance, because being in this completely different environment with directors who only speak Japanese, that can bring some not that great performance from them. But he actually is really good there, playing some kind of corrupt Latin American embassy staff who is doing some traffic of his own. He's speaking a mix of Japanese, English, Spanish, so that makes quite a memorable impression, and that helps to make the film a bit more interesting, in my opinion. It doesn't save the film by itself, but that makes it one of the saving grace, let's put it this way. This collaboration with Toru Murakawa and Sonny Chiba was a bit disappointing. Fortunately, the other collaboration they did in this year, 1979, was much better. And the movie is called Resurection of the Golden Wolf. It's once again a book adaptation, but this one is another collaboration between Murakawa and Yusaku Matsuda, his fetish actor. And this movie main star is Yusaku Matsuda. So it's a Yusaku Matsuda vehicle above all, much more than a Sonny Chiba film. And in my opinion, that's actually the best of their collaboration. Resurrection of the Golden Wolf is a very dark film, and that's what makes it that interesting and that successful, in my opinion. So you have Yusaku Matsuda playing a typical Japanese salaryman, a bit shy, who doesn't have much personality and who doesn't have much ambition either. He's bound to be a salaryman to life and retire to have an uninteresting life. But actually that is a cover, because he's actually someone extremely smart and who is ruthless, who have no mercy, no remorse, and whose goal is to make a maximum of money. And he's going to spy, he's going to blackmail the people from his company, from the higher up from his company, because all of these people are also bastard by themselves. They are all corrupt. They are all using the money for their own ambitions, for their lust, for their a large set of bad things, and they're exploiting their people, their employee, to fulfill their own wrong ambitions, and they are going to be outsmart by this character of Yusaku Matsuda, who is kind of the Batman, the dark superhero of the salaryman, to put it this way. And I think the movie is interesting because of its darkness, because of the way all the characters are shown under a negative light. That's really what makes the salt of the film, in my opinion, and what makes it interesting. And so you end up rooting for Yusaku Matsuda, not really because he's a positive character, because he's not, but just because he is Yusaku Matsuda and all the other characters are just bad. So you are just going to support this one because he's more charismatic than the others, but otherwise he is as bad as them. And that's an interesting approach, I thought. I think you can also have another way to look at the film. It's not shown directly, and the movie itself is basically how Yusaku Matsuda is going to outsmart and is going to be better than all these bad guys, and it can be enjoyed by itself for that as a face value. But I think it can be seen as some kind of revenge of the salaryman, of the fantasy of the average Japanese salaryman of the period. And if you take the film this way, Yusaku Matsuda, the cover of Yusaku Matsuda, this shy salaryman, is actually what he really is. He is actually a real normal, plain Japanese salaryman, and all what happens when he's outsmarting them is kind of the fantasy of the character. And I think in this way, this film can be seen as the revenge of the salaryman on the establishment, on the rich people, on the one who are ruling Japan. And I think that makes it an interesting way to look at the film. I'm not sure that's what Toru Murakawa wanted to do with this film, but I think that makes the film more interesting, in my opinion. In this movie, Sonny Chiba, the supporting part, is also a bad guy. Is also someone who is trying to blackmail some of the people from the hierarchy of the company of Yusaku Matsuda. But he's still, compared to all the characters in the film, is still the more positive of the lot, because he is in love with the female character, and there is a genuine love between the two characters. They are a bit like the Bonnie and Clyde of the film, and because they have this genuine love, because they really have this kind of positive emotion, that makes them different from all the other characters in the film, and so that makes them quite memorable, actually, this couple of characters. They won't end up well, because that's not how it is in this film. As I said, it's a very dark film, so you can expect that everything will end up badly, and that's what happens to them. But their inclusion and the performance of Sonny Chiba brings really something good to the film, for this collaboration between Yusaku Matsuda and Toru Murakawa, which, in my opinion, as I said, is their best collaboration, and which is in a way one of the very last film highlighting this counterculture of the 70s in Japan, this approach going against the establishment, going against the political powers and stuff. And that's something which won't be that frequent in the following decades, in the 80s or 90s, and which was so present in the 70s in the exploitation cinema and other films made by Nagisa Oshima and other Japanese directors. And so this movie is one of the last representative of this trend, and that makes for a very good film. I really highly recommend Resurrection of the Golden Wolf. Not necessarily for Sonny Chiba, even if, as I said, he has a very good performance and a very good character, and it's good, it's there, but the film by itself is worth a recommendation. And we will end up this second video with the year 1980 with 3 films. And the first film we will talk about is called, it has a lot of different titles. One of them is G.I. Samurai, another one is Time Sleep, and the original Japanese title is Sengoku Jitai. And this movie is very important for the Japanese film industry of the time, because that was the arrival, that was the entrance of another important film studio in Japan, that was the Kadokawa. So Kadokawa was a book publishing company, and in the end of the 70s there was a change of leadership with the young heir of the Kadokawa family, Haruki Kadokawa, taking over the company, and it wanted to venture in new ground, to do new things, and he wanted to produce films. So the concept for them, for the Kadokawa company, was to use the IP, the intellectual property, the books that they own, and to adapt the one which had been the most successful into films, and into films with huge budget, into real blockbusters. So it would not be B-movie, but really huge production. And they did that with Sengoku Jitai, with G.I. Samurai, which is, as I said, an adaptation of a science fiction book. And what happens in this book and in this film, you have a squadron of the Japanese Defense Force, the Japanese Army, who is sent back in time and who ends up during the Civil War, the Sengoku era of Japan. And so you have to, you will see what happens there, what happens for these people when they are in this time era. It's quite similar to what Hollywood did with a movie called Nimitz with Kirk Douglas, where you had aircraft carrier being sent back, modern aircraft carrier being sent back just before Pearl Harbor, and so you had a lot of questions about should they interfere, should they change time, and so you have some of those themes, you have some of those concepts in G.I. Samurai, where the characters wonder what they should do about this new situation. Should they side with some of those warlords against the other, and with the risk of changing time? I think the movie is great. I think it's a really good movie. It's a must-see in the filmography of Sonny Chiba, and if you are into Japanese cinema in general. I also appreciate the fact that the movie has a kind of an original way of dealing with time. It's not like in Back to the Future, where when you have an event, it's going to to have a direct effect on our modern timeline. The theory behind the time is that time is like a river, and it's always moving on. And even if you have this kind of weird events happening, because time will continue, it will basically make those weird events being forgotten, and things will continue anyway the way they are supposed to do. And that's an interesting take as those time paradox. It's a bit different from many other ways of dealing with this time travel paradox, and I find it pretty interesting. I would have loved to see to read the original book. Unfortunately, it hasn't never been translated, so I don't know if that's something which is in the book. I guess it is, or if it's something which was brought into the film. But that's very interesting. And at the same time, you have what you can expect, what you would expect from a film like this. You have a huge battle between this kind of medieval Japanese army against a modern army, and it makes for a very impressive battle scene, one of the best battle scenes ever shot, in my opinion. It's really great, and that's very satisfying, much more than Nimitz, the film I talk about, which unfortunately didn't go fully on this aspect. But here, with Sengoku Jitai, the film delivers. You will have an incredible battle, and just for that alone, the film is worth watching. The DVD or whatever the format you will watch it is worth buying. It's really an impressive scene. But at the same time, as I said, you also have an interesting way to deal with time travel, and you also have interesting development for the characters, and especially for the character of Sonny Chiba, who is playing the Lieutenant Iba, who is someone who is wondering what is his purpose in life, being part of the Japanese Defense Force, so an army which is not supposed to fight because of the Pacific Constitution of Japan after the Second World War. So he is going to find new purpose being sent during this Civil War time, and he's basically going to transform himself into a warrior, but a warrior of that time, and he's going to lose the modern humanity in him. And that's a very interesting development in the character, I thought, and it won't necessarily bring him good things, but it's an interesting development for the characters. And so the combination of all these elements, the high production value, the great battle scene, the interesting questions about time travel, and interesting development as well on the characters, make for a GI Samurai a must-see in Sonny Chiba's filmography, in my opinion. There have been, for your information, there have been 2 remakes of this film, or 2 new adaptations of the book, depends how you look at it. One in Japan, one in Korea, South Korea. Unfortunately, both of them are pretty poor compared to this one. So this one is really the best adaptation so far. And it seems like Sonny Chiba really liked the film itself, because he would like to see it being remade in the US, being remade by Hollywood, and I guess with him in one of the leading parts. And he suggested it to have it during the cowboy era, as some kind of western. Personally, I'm not that convinced with this idea, because I don't think the context of the Far West would fit this story, because back then American already had some guns and stuff, and so the difference of power between the two would not be that high that it is the case here between medieval Japan and modern Japan. Or if you want to do that, you would have to be the Indians to be replacing the samurai, but the meaning behind it would be quite different than from Japan. If you have the Indians fighting against the modern American army, that would have a very different meaning. That could be interesting, but I don't see Hollywood doing it. That would bring too much questions about the way things have been done in the past of the US. I'm not sure Hollywood would see it as a commercial enough project. So I don't see this project happening but here it is. Know that Sonny Chiba would like to see it happen in the future. Who knows? Actually, I did a mistake. This movie, G.I. Samurai, was from 1979, and actually that was the only movie from 1979, because Sonny Chiba was not just doing nothing, he was also very active in TV. But so the two last movies we are going to talk for this video are going to be from 1980. And that's going to be first Virus, directed by Kinji Fukasaku, our good friend Kinji Fukasaku, and produced by Kadokawa, so the producers of G.I. Samurai. And Virus is, of course, another adaptation of a book which Kadokawa had published before with great success. And as the title says, it is the story of how a virus is spreading all over the world and is basically killing all humanity. So it's a disaster film. And disaster film had been pretty popular in Japan in the 70s. You had the Sinking of Japan, which had been a big success, and then you had later Nostradamus, which was another big success, and each time it was getting bigger and bigger. The Sinking of Japan was destruction of Japan, of course. Nostradamus was the risk of the extinction of humanity, and Virus is basically the fulfillment of that prophecy, with humanity being wiped out. Once again, that is a very ambitious film, a very big production, with in this case being shot in different parts of the world. Being in the US, they use some American actors. You have a lot of scenes with crowds. You have visions of end of the world, so it's quite ambitious film. And nowadays, with what we are living with the current COVID pandemic, that makes for an interesting watch, because there are some of the things being described there which could apply to what we have been seeing those last few months. Having said that, while I think the film is certainly watchable and is worth at least one watch, I don't think it's that successful. I think the film is a bit too long, a bit too heavy on dialogue, and sometimes you are not. There are some moments which are not that interesting. So it's a mixed bag. You appreciate the ambition. You appreciate to see some of the actors, including Sonny Chiba, who is playing a scientist in a scientist base in a base in the South Pole. But at the end of the day, it's not that interesting to watch, and it's a bit bloated. It's a bit too long, too big for its own good. Maybe if it had concentrated on a couple less characters, that could have been more interesting. But mixed bag there. Mixed bag there. I would still say, as it is Kinji Fukasaku, as there is Sonny Chiba, it's still worth watching once, but not a very strong recommendation in my book. And the last film we are going to talk about in this second video of the retrospective of Sonny Chiba is Shogun Ninja, directed by Norofumi Suzuki, so the director of Shorinji Kempo, The Killing Machine. And Shogun Ninja is actually more a vehicle for Hiroyuki Sanada. So Hiroyuki Sanada, which we had seen already being pushed to become a new young action star in a film like Message from Space, and Shogun's Ninja is even more a film made for him to become a star. So you have a lot of opportunities to see his acting skills a bit, but mostly his action skills. So doing a lot of action scenes on his own. And he's, as we know now, he is a very good actor. He was a very good martial artist as well. So there is no problem. He is able to deliver on for that. Shogun Ninja is a good vehicle for him, and it is a film which is indeed able to show off his skills. It's a bit of a transitional film in many ways. You have a bit of the seriousness from the Yagyu clan conspiracy made 2 years before by the setting, the historical setting. There is a real historical context there, but at the same time you have some exploitation elements with the ninja, with the violence, and you have also an emphasis on action, the Japan Action Club action, which would be more present in the 80s. So it's really a transitional film on many aspects, but fairly entertaining, a fairly good one, with Sonny Chiba here playing the main antagonist. He's playing a ninja master, a very cunning, very evil ninja master who is always accompanied by two weird bodyguards, and it makes for some interesting action scenes, because with a ninja you have a bit of magic element, and so that makes for some quite creative action scenes. Each time Sonny Chiba is there, it's good. It's a pleasure to see him on the screen, and Hiroyuki Sanada is also a pleasure to see on the screen. So Shogun Ninja is certainly a recommendation. I think there is only one problem with this film, and that is the music. The music is a weird, funky, jazzy style music, and I think it absolutely do not fit with the film, and that's very weird. I think it kind of kills the tempo and the energy of some of the action scenes. Maybe you will like it more than me, but I think that's really a big shortcoming for the film. It should still be what if you are a fan of Sonny Chiba and Hiroyuki Sanada, but be warned that it may be a bit of a turn off sometimes when you have this music spoiling and destroying some of the scenes of the film. And that's it. We have finished the year 1980, and we have finished for this second part of the Sonny Chiba retrospective. I hope you found some of the information I gave interesting. I hope it motivates you to watch some of the films I have talked about and I have recommended, and I hope it will help you to appreciate even more the greatness of this legend that is Sonny Chiba. Hopefully I will find you back on the third and last part of this retrospective, the third part of this Sonny Chiba retrospective, which will start from 1981 until the very end of his career, or at least until now, as he is still very active. And so I hope you will be with me again for this last part of the Sonny Chiba retrospective. Until then, take care.